Hey, twos and threes, thank you for gathering with us. Caleb and I said before the podcast, we're just going to try that out. His reaction is genuine to this. I like it. I like it.
And fours can get out. Yeah. Okay. Welcome to 2 or 3 Gathered.
Now I feel like you're going to do me in the editing and that's how you're going to start it. You just be like, cut that initial part out.
I'll be fair. Fair for what is deserved from that.
Yeah, I'll just make it hard for you and just say it again. So it's like makes it hard to actually find the exact part. So
welcome to 2 or 3 Gathered. I am one of your co-hosts, Caleb, and this is my co-host, Jared.
Hey, twos and threes. Thank you for gathering with us.
This is my co-host, Jared.
Okay, yep.
Jared, how are you today?
Yeah, I'm so good. Had a few laughs before the podcast, even during the podcast. You know, we're not even 2-3 minutes in. Noticed the intention. Yeah, 2 or 3 intentional. I'm glad you picked up on that. Well, man, I'm so good.
2 or 3 hours.
Love it. We should probably do our intro, eh? That's the professional thing to do here, eh?
Yeah. Welcome all. 2 or 3 Gathered is a series of conversations with Christian brothers and sisters, considering their efforts and contributions to the kingdom vocationally, their stories and testimonies of God's sovereignty and grace, and an opportunity to tackle the relevant issues the church faces in the 21st century.
In this, we seek to equip the saints by networking within the body, starting the conversation around often taboo subjects, and seeking to develop unity across Christian denominations and traditions by starting conversations on worthy topics.
We want to educate the wider body of Christ by asking these experts, people of wisdom across multiple fields, the hot button questions and sophisticated questions that we believe there are answers for in Christ's church, but that there's not necessarily access to.
And it is our heart that Christ himself would be in our midst as we converse about things we believe he himself is very interested in. Welcome, twos and threes. Thank you for gathering with us.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Beloved listeners.
So I'm trying to convince Caleb, dear audience, that's a great starter. I think he's going to take a few more podcasts to warm up to it.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe. How are you, man?
I'm good. I've recently moved house, as some may notice if they're watching video and have watched previous videos. So we're still in the midst of unpacking, but we're almost done with that. So that's great.
Do you find like when you actually moved house, were there some boxes that you'd never unpacked? Because I've had that a couple of times moving from place to place.
Yeah, well, most of our stuff was unpacked in the last place since we didn't have a huge amount of space anyway. So
yeah. Man, that's good. And what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I finished school for the year. School's out.
Nice.
Yeah, summer vacation. You know, all the relevant memes and all the relevant. There's like a bunch of American movies about that very topic, huh?
Yeah.
Teachers
have it easy.
So thank you for joining us. We're going to end it there. No, honestly, like this is one perk that, like, yeah, you're right. Like, you're totally right. We have it easy in this regard.
In that regard, yeah.
In that regard. Like it's a nice perk, especially like I'm not even going to be like, but we're working during the holidays. Like I get time with my wife and kid, and you know, I get there for 6 weeks. Like, what a dream! How cool is that?
That's pretty.
Yeah, man. It's actually like something that came up during one of my classes in the last 2 weeks that I thought would be a good subject of conversation today. But I thought I'd actually bring the topic to Caleb, CZ today, around CZ. Like I was trying to do blood before the podcast, I can't do it.
Neither.
You should just like throw hands of type of confidence, and people are like, yo, he's doing bloods, you know. Yeah, like I wanted to actually talk about this idea of conspiracy theories and Christians.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one, because I think like there's a part of me that's just like fascinated by the whole idea of conspiracy theories. Yeah. Two, I think it's quite a relevant topic, like in this day and age, in this kind of post-truth era, postmodernism definitely, which is actually has a hyper-skeptic bent where we can we really trust anything, or you know, can we not trust anything? So as a result, like people question everything. And yeah, it's kind of on the back of like I had this idea, you know, Matt Butler from church, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he told me like when he went to a legal conference, because he's a lawyer. He went to a legal conference a couple of years ago. They had to do kind of like a 3-minute icebreaker where basically every lawyer at this particular group within the conference had to do like a 3-minute speech on something. And so he chose to do a 3-minute speech on flat earth, like wore a tinfoil hat and like, you know, went straight face, you know, dogmatically trying to convince everyone flat earth is correct, it's true, I'm going to convince everyone. And so I got the idea, it's like, you probably do that with a classroom of kids. And so I did, like, you know, like 2 weeks out before the end of the year, I said to my kids, because it's a wild kind of time teaching at the end of the year where like the assessments are all finished and the kids know the assessments are all finished. So it's like, you've got to find kind of creative ways to kind of keep them interested and keep them captivated. Yeah. So we had a bit of space where I actually said, no, let's teach you some conspiracy theories. I'm interested in this as a topic. I think you guys could actually do some interesting ones. And I got so many letters. No, I got no letters from parents. I had one. Yeah, there will be on the back of this. I had one kid talk about cursing toys, you know, which was interesting. Have you seen that before?
About what?
The cursing toys, like basically if you do combinations of buttons with certain like toys made for kids, they like essentially swear, and it's like they shouldn't.
Oh, no, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah. Look it up, listeners. Check it out.
Okay.
We had one which we'll hopefully talk about today about how The Simpsons have actually predicted the future on a number of occasions. Mm-hmm. Yep, you've heard that one.
Yeah.
Like
there's an entire genre as you scroll down Disney Plus. You know, it's got the Star Wars collection, the MCU, blah blah blah, all these Pixar movies. Then it says episodes where Simpsons predicted the future.
Really?
That's an entire playlist on Disney Plus.
Get out, really?
Yeah.
That's cool. Like they've just like they've bought into the meme. I love it.
They've just embraced it. Yeah.
Is this a topic of interest for you, man? Like, do you like conspiracy theories as a topic, or
hate them? See ya. No, I love conspiracy theories. I haven't been keeping up with a lot lately. But it's something that veterans of the podcast will remember that I did get into some here and there. Mm-hmm. I followed far too many. And then I started realizing, okay, I'm believing that the Illuminati are running things. No, this group are running things. No, this group. No, this. And then it became like they're all having a power play for the world at our expense. And it just became quite far-fetched, a lot of the things that I was believing, and I just kind of sat back and took a look and realized, okay, I'm a bit wacky. If I told these views to a clinical professional, I may not be going home for a few weeks. No, it wasn't that bad, but
yeah.
I think I also realized that a lot of the stuff, and we'll possibly talk about this in a few minutes, but a lot of the stuff that I believed I was trying to use to deflect from my own issues, my own lack of, I guess, my lack of proactivity. Proactivity. I was just quite a lazy person. I had not a huge amount going for me. I had some things going for me life-wise, but ultimately I just wanted to blame my issues on an external force. I didn't want to stand up and, for my own self, address my own issues and think, okay, let's own it. And I want to be careful in saying this, but
yeah, sure.
I do see that in a lot of conspiracy theorists. I don't know if this is the majority. I do know that I encountered in my work in the Department of Corrections, a lot of offenders that I dealt with did have certain conspiracy theories that they followed. The bigger those theories got, the more I realized that these people were somewhat not very, again, proactive, not very motivated to actually get stuff done for themselves. So I think that was a big thing for me. Just realizing that I needed to take responsibility for myself. But even though I kind of came out of that, I still find conspiracy theories absolutely fascinating. Some more small ones I still hold to. But if they turn out not to be true, I'm not bothered either way.
But there's an interesting tension you mentioned there, right? Like, and by the way, man, love your candor, love your vulnerability. It's like, I it's one of the things I like ardently admire about you.
Thank you.
But it's like there's this tension, right? Like of the one and the many, because it's like you, as I understand it, based on what you're saying, like, you know, you, and this is, I think, like one of the merits of the Christian worldview is that the one and the many being this idea that actually you are an individual, but you are also part of groups and communities. Like you are an individual and you have your own ideas and you have your own beliefs, passions, interests, but that is also influenced by the context you find yourself in, right? And so, like, interestingly, on the basis of what you're saying, like, obviously, if we talk about soteriology, theology of salvation, there's an understanding that as an individual, I am accountable for my actions, I'm accountable for what I do in the relationship with Christ, as the outworking of that transformation in my own life. But as one of the many, as part of the many, you are also a product of your circumstances. You are also a product of influences. And so, like, it's like you can't bear the weight of the world and kind of your own proactivity towards change, right? There's a certain amount of, like, I guess, we're not young men anymore, would you say, right? We're young men. We're kind of somewhere in the middle, right? You know?
Wise. We're wise.
We're wise. I'd like to get to touch on that too. Like, we're at this point where we're still kind of actually, you know, we know enough to kind of look back and it's like, you know, look how far I've come, but we're, you know, coming into those, you know, stage of like, you know, we'll be 30 in a year or two, a couple of years, and then actually saying like, there's still a lot more we have to go and still a lot more we have to learn. And part of that one of the many, as I see it converging on what you're saying, is like, you get to an age where you actually realize there's so much I've still got to do. There's so much I've still got to work on myself. But I also acknowledge that that is a tension of there are circumstances which I am under, of which I have no control over, and I can't actively change those things, although they do have an influence over me. I don't know, like, do you think there's that element to it as well, like an acknowledgement of that tension, both the one and the many in your life?
Yeah, potentially. I think a lot of my leanings toward these ideas were pretty. I think I ended up being quite isolated in my beliefs. That there were some people that I had in my life that would affirm some of these things, but in terms of also people contributing to issues that I had to address within myself, I don't think there was much of that either. I think it was mostly, encouraged by my own lack of motivation. If that answers your question.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I want to get onto some of the deeper reasons, like, because part of me bringing up this topic is not only just like, let's have a laugh, like, that's interesting, like, let's look at some of these ideas, but also kind of what is it about this particular subset of Christian thinking and Christians that actually lean towards a ready embracing of these ideas? Like, what is it in Christianity that some of us are more kind of inclined towards that? I mean, I can speak for myself, right? Like, I could say, I am smart. You are smart. I'm not very wise, because I think there's a difference between those two things, right? I think I can see the Lord has actually gifted me with a good brain, but there have been two periods in my own life, like I can think as well, where, I have a certain leaning towards these ideas, of flirting with these ideas, where it's like, oh, that's so true, and it's just, there's a whole cabal, trying to conspire against the whole world, and just I think God has put that gullibility in me to keep me humble and just be like, okay, make sure you're discerning, make sure you actually check your facts and cross your T's and dot your I's, make sure you actually check your sources. I'm enjoying, I think part of it's been on the basis of starting this podcast, I'm really enjoying being at a stage where I'm loving learning again. Like, I'm loving actually not knowing everything, being like, I'm going to not say that I have an opinion on that. I'm going to check that. I'm going to try and find out more before I can claim to have an opinion on that. I can say what I know, but even that runs up against limits. Hey. Yeah. And I think I want to talk more to that, because I think, like, I find myself in that same camp. I come with a whole lot of empathy and sympathy for my fellow brothers and sisters who might be, oh, but what about this and what about that? Hopefully towards the end of this, we can maybe offer some advice to our fellow brothers and sisters to say, like, hey, like, maybe not this, and this is maybe that some of these tests you can actually apply to actually see why and how and where is the basis. I don't know, like, what are your thoughts on that, man?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit to unpack there. So, I think a big draw for a lot of Christians to conspiracy theories is partially to do with the change they see happening in the world. That, be it a repetition of a past evil or something that seems new. We want to be able to combat that. In the past, we've combated previous evils. We got rid of Hitler. Which is some interesting conspiracy theories about. We took down the commies. We abolished slavery, at least legally. We did these things, but now there are other things that I think also what that springs to mind is it comes from a lot of insecurity. If someone espouses an idea that is foreign to our own desires, or be it political, religious, social, etc., I think people feel very insecure in that, and they want to put an end to those opposing ideas. And it's sometimes quite an instinctive thing that's not necessarily deliberate. but they tend to want to just combat that right away and say, okay, nah, that's coming from Satan. And there's no easier way to do that than to accuse someone of being involved in a satanic cabal, because if people are suspected of committing such atrocities as sacrificing children, then of course, why would we want them running these companies that we buy our everyday essentials from? Why would we want them running our countries? So I think that's a very good tactic to take down a lot of rival concepts.
Did you ever read no, sorry, you finish your point. Sorry.
Oh, no, go on.
I was going to say, did you ever read Totaliaria by Ian Wishart?
A while ago, I think, yes.
Yeah. I remember that was I'd kind of been aware of conspiracy theories before, but that was a book that was oh my gosh, this is it, he's cottoned onto something that I've kind of been always, suspecting, but never known how to put into words. And then it's interesting as I've I probably read that about 4 or 5 years ago, time and a bit of distance and hopefully a bit of sobriety and wisdom, kind of made me think. I remember reading that first part of the book and it's yes. And then towards the end of the book, I'm not so convinced on that. And then the point that he arrives at, it's not sure I can conclusively agree with that. But maybe we'll get onto some of the points that he touched on in the conversation. I just remember that being a real significant exposure to oh yeah, there is a subset, I think, of Christians that are inclined towards this way of thinking and kind of trying to find the breadcrumbs, see where they lead, and it's actually, yep, this is, it's clearly taking me to this destination, and I'm justified in thinking this, and I'm in an echo chamber where people are telling me the same thing. A lot of confirmation bias, eh?
Yeah.
Introducing. No.
Yeah. So I think you've touched on something in terms of the echo chambers, because that's something that happens just simply enough by just watching the right things on YouTube, be it conspiracy theory or political or religious topics.
Yes.
Our online algorithms pick up on what you're consuming, so they start suggesting more and more of that. There are certain algorithms nowadays that try to avoid certain topics that the owners of the companies believe to be dangerous ideas or antithetical to their mission statement, which I understand they're private companies. They have every right to do that. There are some arguments as to why they maybe shouldn't do that, but I think, again, the whole idea of echo chambers, that really became a thing for me online. I wasn't so good at discerning what was coming my way, and I just kind of thought, well, that lines up with what I want to be true. So
yes.
Why not? That must be true, and I really don't like that politicians. So if something comes out that they're satanic and they're involved in the Bohemian Grove cult, then cool. That's great for me.
Well, it's it gives you a justification to demonize, to not have to adhere to not find the redeeming qualities in another person or in another point of view. Because it's well, if they believe that, then why would I believe anything that they espouse? Which I don't think is a Christian idea, fundamentally. I think, if we understand that someone's made in the image of God is Imago Dei, you've actually got to affirm the possibility that everyone can be. It's like when Christ is actually saying, in as much as you did it for the least of these, you did it unto me. There's actually a possibility for the encounter with Christ in the face of the other. Like Mother Teresa of Calcutta, for example, formed much of her ministry on this very idea, serving the lowest on the case system, like in that country and in that context, on the basis of an idea, I'm serving Christ. I'm not just serving this poor person, this leprous person, this sick and dying person. Like, I think there's very much... You okay, love? Sorry. Are you okay, love? Yeah. Fundamentally, fundamentally, I don't think that's a Christian idea, eh? Because it's like...
Yeah, I mean, it depends on, in regards to what you're talking about. If you're talking about listening to their, I guess, philosophical and religious teachings, then maybe not. Romans 16:17 talks about how we, as Christians, should watch out for those who teach a doctrine that is foreign or divisive to us, and not only to watch out for them, but to avoid them. So in regards to that, yes, but in terms of maybe people who have something to teach us politically or not in relation to our theological journey, yeah,
that's valid. I was going to say something to, like, I want to get onto, like, talking to some of these particular theories and, back and forth, ping-ponging back and forth a little bit, because I want to talk about this meat again.
Yeah.
But you did mention about that whole idea of algorithms kind of setting, what we actually are exposed to. Like, I mean, it's crazy hearing a statistic like Reddit now is the source in which most people get their news. I remember watching a TED Ed video a couple of years ago, but talking about how the algorithms kind of create an echo chamber for you. Like, it will serve you up content via Facebook, via Google, that you are, by your history, by the way you actually browse, you would be looking for this as opposed to that. And that's a kind of a modality that kind of, it doesn't encourage you to look for the other perspective, or if it does, it's looking for kind of a straw man perspective rather than actually the valid interpretation or the valid, encounter with the opposing point of view to your otherwise point of view. Worrying trends, I think. But I'd love to get your thoughts. I'd love to get your thoughts as we get back to that. But you want to say something to that?
In regards to that, I guess there could be a conspiracy theory around that, something that I do believe. I don't have any necessarily evidence for this. I'm sure one could potentially find it, but I think that is a tool that a lot of the powers that be, or just people who profit off this kind of division, are trying for. They're trying to have people set in their ways, left or right. So then there is more division, there is more debate.
You've seen The Great Hack, haven't you?
No.
Right. So sorry, finish what you were going to say.
So I mean, in regards to that, obviously there's a lot of division caused through these echo chambers, because people are not only, it's not that they're refusing to see the other side, it's that they're finding it not impossible, but near impossible to see the other side, because they're bombarded with so much information that affirms their own ideals. And again, I'd be happy to be wrong about this, but I'm sure there are people that are certainly happy for this division to be caused.
I will give you a prime example of that. So, viewers, my dear co-host, I recommend, watch this with your dear wife later on. Netflix, The Great Hack. We have an example. This isn't conspiracy theory conjecture. This is prime example, factual, proven, of exactly what Caleb was talking about. The Great Hack, look it up on Netflix. So basically, there was a company in the UK called Cambridge Analytica, which you may or may not have heard about.
Yep.
But basically, they became aware of this dynamic of, feeding people content, presenting stuff that actually plays to their already perspective, to their already a certain point of view. And so Cambridge Analytica, the way they purposed themselves was actually they're like a think tank, they're a media creating organization, but they would use AI and they would use algorithms to actually produce content that actually could persuade people of certain points of view, which you think sounds kind of innocuous and kind of non-important, but it turned out being really, really significant for a number of reasons. So there was a particular country, I'm just going to give the truncated version because it's worth watching for yourself. There was a particular country, I believe it was an Asian country. Please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about that. But basically, they swung this election by actually persuading a number of non-aligned voters on a particular issue to vote a certain way. And the idea was that actually they appealed to these younger voters, these swing voters, if you will, using immediate social media campaign about take a stand, rise up. It was around flash mobs, and they swung this election to be to have a democratic government that was actually voted in over another existing party. So you see that in the face and you think, you could think nothing of it, but it's that's pretty, one, powerful, two, terrifying, because it was social media that was able to actually influence a nation, the trajectory of a nation on a certain issue. Cut forward to what happened with the Trump versus Hillary election. And it was confirmed that Cambridge Analytica had a direct hand in the swing states, the swing voters in those states, convincing not to vote Hillary, convincing to vote Trump. These people that were unaligned, these people that were actually hadn't decided in a particular way. They used Facebook to create content that was not factual, very pathological, very emotionally driven, to actually convince these voters to vote a certain way. And one of the results of that is that actually Trump was voted. It's not the single thing that was actually related, but obviously this had an influence on how people voted to actually eventuate that result. So cut forward to, we have the fact that, Cambridge Analytica and the CEO was brought in front of, the equivalent of the Senate in the UK and actually come to trial. But it's very hard to actually try someone for stuff like this when there aren't laws in place for this.
Yeah.
But essentially what you've done is actually you have affected the outcome of a nation by actually convincing people, you've weaponized, and that's the way they were talking about it. I'm using their terms. You've weaponized the democratic process by actually using these technologies. And what it does is, one, without laws in place to actually try people for this, you can't really actually criminalize someone. You can't actually, send someone to prison on the basis of laws that don't exist. Yeah. And that's kind of the difficult situation they found this particular CEO and this particular company in, because they couldn't actually pin them on anything that did exist. They tried to, but he could actually kind of wriggle his way out. It's it wasn't like this, it was more like this. Very fascinating. But the second thing is it actually created this precedent of, if this company has done this, it won't be long before other companies do this, and this becomes a free market issue where actually other companies set themselves up. This place has had a monopoly, but you can vie to actually persuade the populace via these digital technology companies to actually get people to vote a certain way. Feeds very much into a post-truth era, and I think it's an alarming it's a brave new world that we face, to quote that dystopian reference.
Yeah. Well, now that you've mentioned that, and especially the name Cambridge Analytica, that does ring a bell. I may have watched The Great Hack. I may have watched something else about them. But I don't remember too much of it, but I do remember the name. So, but yeah, no, I think that's, again, one of the things that's just quite daunting and that's what fuels a lot of conspiracy theories as well, is the idea that things have happened certain conspiracy theories have been proven to be true, or pretty darn close to it. One of the probably one of the most well-known conspiracy theorists of today is Alex Jones.
Yes. I'm so glad he's come up in this cast.
He has to come up.
But I mean, he's a curious one because there is a number of things that he's actually said that have come true.
Exactly. Such as one of his often go-tos. I don't know if he still does this. I haven't kept up with his more recent stuff. I found it became a little less exciting when he just became a Trump pundit. But not that that's all he is now, but pretty much. But he would often use the go-to of fluoride in the water. He would say, we were always talking about how they're putting fluoride in the water. Turned out to be true. Yes. And that's a big thing for a lot of conspiracy theorists. Now, a lot of dentists don't necessarily dislike that idea. And a lot of parents who are paying their kids' dentistry bills don't dislike that idea either. So is it a bad thing? Is it really a mind control device? Is it really something that dumbs down the population? There's not much, if any, evidence for that at all. But either way, when they were originally saying they're putting fluoride in the water, all the authorities or people that they would speak to would disagree and say, no, we're not.
Well, I mean, if we're making parallels to the fall of Western civilization with Rome, right? You know, the Roman aristocracy were drinking mercury in their pipes and they were all driven mad. So you know, maybe fluoride's our mercury. You know, maybe the Mongols are about to sack us. You know, who's to say?
Or the Russians.
Or the Russians. Oh, Putin, man, like that. I mean, that's a rabbit hole we could go down. Like, you know, he's got a bit of like an assassin smile, eh? Like, I've heard about journalists going missing and that kind of stuff.
Although I have noticed a lot of Christian conspiracy theorists don't really like to talk badly of Putin, because a lot of Christian conspiracy theorists do tend to be more right-wing in their conspiracy theories. And for some reason, a lot of the Western right-wing groups are very pro-Russia right now.
Interesting.
Not entirely, but a lot of the conspiracy theory ones are, I've found. And they think that there's this little alliance of Putin and Trump working to dismantle the Illuminati from within, and trying to take down corrupt government from within, which is just quite ironic considering the background of both of the men. And
So I'd like to see how actually some of those bigger theories leak and see if we actually cover them. But I actually have a list here of some theories that, you know, are somewhat popular, some a little bit more kind of like fun and cavalier, some a bit more serious. And I just wanted to see what your take was on them, my dear friend. Good man. So did you know Walt Disney is cryogenically frozen and he's still alive, and he is he's frozen in a tank underneath the Pirates of the Caribbean ride in Disneyland. Yeah. Do you know that?
Bless you. Sorry.
Bless you. Bless you.
I knew of the theory about him being cryogenically frozen. And
you're a sheeple. You're just believing what everyone else wants to believe.
We're talking about conspiracy theories. Well, yes. So I have heard of the theory of him being frozen cryogenically. Supposedly it was his desire to be done so. Whether or not he actually wanted that, I've never looked into. Obviously not, but I didn't know about the part that his cryogenically frozen body is under the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. I did not know that. Now, which Disneyland are you talking about, though, as well, is what I would want to know. Because
is it a matter of different parts of his body are under different Disneylands, and if you actually, on a map, find all these places together, you see where they converge, and
it makes a square and compass on a map.
Yes. Like and there's something to be found, like his treasure, like the will in his last testament, like in the center. Yep. X marks the spot, man. Honestly.
Yeah.
No, I've heard that it's like because the technology didn't exist yet. Basically, it's like oh well, like, and so other people have cryogenically frozen themselves as well. Like it can be as little as say, what was the statistics I heard? The numbers like as little as $6,000 to do this, or as much as like $40,000 to actually freeze yourself to actually. But the technology doesn't exist yet to revive someone, and they've never been able to successfully do it yet either,
as far as we know.
As far as we know.
Yeah.
So first theory, your take is unsolved, unproven.
Unsolved, unproven. Would be interesting, though. I would like to see him come back and then see where Disney's gone. And how not anti-Semitic and full of racist depictions of African cartoons they have moved away from. I'd like to see his reaction to that. But yeah, sadly, this is probably a desire that will not be fulfilled.
Well, I mean, once technology exists, possibly, right?
Exactly.
What's your take on we have never actually landed on the moon? When I mean I'm saying obviously the US, but that it was staged, it was faked. Have you heard this before?
I've heard this one plenty. This is probably one of the oldest modern conspiracy theories.
I was exposed to this like watching a doco when I was like, like before the age of 10. I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah. And there are multiple schools of thought within the theory of the fake moon landing. Some believe that we did land on the moon, but only in the second, and only in the second landing was it real. And that school of thought is that NASA were rushed off their feet and had to meet a deadline that they could not meet because of the technology that they had or something of the sort. And they faked it.
There was a space race pressure, like with Russia. Is that right?
Too. Yep. Yeah. So that contributes to the conspiracy theory, and that Buzz Aldrin's landing was the first landing on the moon. Is that theory? Then there are theories that we just haven't gotten there at all. Then you can take that even further to say that we don't even have satellites outside of the atmosphere. That's within one realm of flat Earth theories, but I'm sure we'll get to that later.
No, what's that theory? No, like I remember the doco, like distinctly, like they use stuff like, the flag in the footage, it's waving. And so like, if it was on the moon, there's no atmosphere. So surely the flag shouldn't be waving at like the US flag they've stationed. Or they made the point that a lot of the scenery that they're actually, got shots of resemble very closely areas close to Area 51 in the States.
Yeah.
And so it's like, like that kind of points to the fact that it could have been faked, it could have been staged. The space race with Russia is like kind of like, that's a pretty convincing point for me because it makes me think like I could see them like it's a matter of prestige, it's a matter of like, superpower posturing. I could see them trying to be like, well, let's try and do it first and actually demoralize in a political spectacle this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think were I to go along with any of those theories, it would be we got there but not in the first try. But I still find that quite hard to go along with in the first place.
Why haven't they tried to do it since? Like, Because that's an interesting thing to.
Well,
follow up
India
on
are
that
trying
topic,
for
right?
it.
They are.
India are trying for it. Of all countries that need to be spending money on getting to the moon, instead of addressing the rampant sex trafficking or
Corruption.
Although they are addressing that in places, but yeah,
That's fair. Yep.
yeah.
Man, did you total tangent? Did you hear about that 250 million worker strike?
Yeah, a quarter
Because
of the nation's workers. Yeah,
blew my mind. And no Western media you find was reporting on it. I had to see my friend post about this and feel strongly enough about it to be like, I need to subscribe to Al Jazeera because I'm not getting enough. I'm getting a very Western bias. So yeah, here's an interesting one. So Avril Lavigne actually died some time ago and was replaced by a body double called Melissa Vandella, I think her name was. Have you heard this theory?
I have heard the Avril Lavigne theory. I didn't look too much into that one. There are a few different celebrity double theories. There was Avril Lavigne to begin with. One of the recent ones is Britney Spears, because there was a whole lot of craziness going on in her world.
Is that the whole free Britney stuff? And
it's somewhat in relation to that, as far as I'm aware. I haven't looked into that one too much. One of the most recent ones is that Ivanka Trump has been replaced.
Really?
Yeah. That
or some Russian sleeper agent or something like that.
Yeah, because she just wasn't super happy with everything going on.
Right.
Because there have been a number of theories circulating. I wouldn't even call them conspiracy theories, but just theories about how Ivanka apparently didn't even think that Trump was going to win, and she was super disappointed and unhappy. And,
it sounds a bit Stepford wifey, eh?
Yeah.
A little bit Stepford wifey.
One of the celebrity replacement theories that I did look into a while back was Miley Cyrus.
She's replaced?
Around the time of her single Can't Be Tamed, that was supposedly a rebellion track telling the man that she can't be tamed, she can't be controlled. And the theory is that after that she was killed and her body was dumped, I think, somewhere in a desert in California.
Far out.
And one of the things behind the theory is that at the time that this supposed death happened, there was a small affiliate station of TMZ that reported on Miley Cyrus's death in that area. And then all of a sudden, supposedly, they stopped reporting on it. They didn't even do a follow-up apology, or this didn't happen.
Got a gag order from someone high up or something.
Supposedly, yeah. And then Miley started getting a little bit more provocative with her music and her music videos and her performances, and they started getting a bit more in the direction that the record labels supposedly wanted her to go in.
I'm convinced. You've got me.
I'll try link some of the stuff about that if I can still find it. Or if it's an interesting one to follow. There are a few different. I think someone who covers a lot of the celebrity replacement theories, just from an interest point of view, is Shane Dawson.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, he does some great stuff on conspiracy theories. Hey.
He does. Yeah. I watched his. One great thing about his conspiracy theories was when he was on the H3H3 podcast, talking about those, and the whole mattress company one. That one's quite a fun one.
What's that one?
It's that there are these mattress. I can't remember what the company's called, but these mattress or companies that are all around the States, And there are just so many of them, these big ass showrooms that have no one going to them. And there are like three, like some cities you can just stand in the middle of an intersection and look around and you can see three within a 5-minute walk.
Really?
And it just makes, like, people have no idea what's going on with it. A lot of people have speculated that it's like a money laundering kind of
Yep,
thing.
that's what I was sniffing. Smells
Yeah.
like money laundering to me.
Yeah. So, and that's one of the more harmless conspiracy theories out there, but it's also pretty like what's going on, because there are just so many of them. It's almost as if they're like the McDonald's of mattress companies, but they don't seem to get that much publicity or seem to have many customers going in and out, or courier drivers or delivery trucks.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, going back to the Avril Lavigne one, like she apparently it was disproven. Like it came back from an online Brazilian blog.
Okay.
Yeah, so basically it was kind of circulated as kind of like as a bit of a joke, right, by actual Brazilian people. Like the disclaimer on the original blog post from the original post was actually, this blog was created to show how conspiracy theories can look true. And like they were citing stuff like, lyrics and like showing photos and like differences between faces, like, this is what she looked like now and this is what she looked like then, like, but like, like what happened is that it was kind of like this inside joke within Brazil, like, haha, like she's actually still the same person. And then like Western media picked it up and it's like, this is true. This is like, and it just got this like much wider like life on the back of it as a result of, kind of feeds into this whole conversation of like what we're talking about later, and maybe which we can talk about towards the end. Like journalism is a lot to answer for with some of this stuff. Yeah.
And that reminds me a little bit of the dihydrogen monoxide pranks. Have you heard of those?
Yeah.
So
no, like what's tell me about it. Yeah.
So for those
edit. Yeah. No, tell me.
Yeah. So for those who are unaware, the dihydrogen monoxide is a dangerous chemical. It causes corrosion in metals. Everyone who consumes dihydrogen monoxide dies, which is true. There's
it's
no
in the air. That's
what
I've heard. It's in the air.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. It's actually present in your body already. Like,
okay, so it's also known as hydroxyl acid. It is the major component of acid rain. It contributes to the greenhouse effect. It may cause severe burns, contributes to the erosion of our natural landscape, accelerates corrosion of rusting and many metals, may cause electrical failures and decreased effectiveness of automobile brakes, and has been found in excised tumors of terminal cancer patients. Now, anyone with half a brain will know that dihydrogen monoxide is just another name for H2O, water. Now, a lot of people every so often bring about a petition in various local governments around the world to ban dihydrogen monoxide. I think 2 or 3 times it's actually gone forth to New Zealand Parliament.
Really?
By MPs who have been duped. Not within the last 10 years though, but yeah, you can look on websites of lists of times dihydrogen monoxide petitions have been put forward to world parliaments, and it's hilarious that jokes like this become major conspiracy theories.
Yes, that's like when you need mates around you being like, hey, like, let's just look at it through another light for a second, let's think before you post. Like, I mean, I've heard comments like about how Twitter is so bad for this because it's like it rewards impulsivity. Yeah. Like the whole interface and the whole way it's set up, it rewards on impulsivity. Yeah. And sound bites and like, let's do something without context. Like, that's kind of like a dangerous combination for social media, I think.
Yeah. Cool. What's the next theory?
Next one is all the Disney movies are set in the same universe. Have you heard that one?
All Disney movies are set in the same universe.
Mm-hmm.
I think I may have come across that one.
Mm.
I'd find that really hard to believe with the Cars movies, which my wife refuses to even exist.
But there are Easter eggs though. There are Easter eggs in the films.
Yeah, there are. And one thing that would tie in a lot of the Pixar movies is obviously the Star Ball that was originally in Toy Story and is in a bunch of other Pixar films.
Well, you've seen the lion skin that Hercules wears is Scar from the Lion King, right? Like that's in Hercules animated film.
Yeah.
Did you hear?
That's possible.
Did you hear that? Go on. Sorry. No, I was just going to say, have you heard that Elsa and Rapunzel, so like from Tangled, actually sisters? That's why they actually are both royalty. They both have magical powers. They both have a similar origin story. Yep, it's all linked.
Yeah. One thing I like to ask of that theory is, does that include Star Wars? Now owning Disney, and that there would be no problem with that because that is in a galaxy far, far away. But does that involve the MCU?
You'd have to do a lot of retconning to spin that. I think.
I want to see like Thanos and what's his name? Sorry,
Homer Simpson, because Fox is owned by Disney as well.
They do.
They kind of look similar, Thanos and Homer Simpson.
Sorry. So I want to see Thanos and Zurg, Buzz Lightyear's foe, duke it out for universal dominance.
Yes.
That would be quite an interesting...
Why those two?
That was the first villain within Pixar that just came to mind. So, yeah. But yeah, I don't know much about that conspiracy theory too much. I have heard a little bit about it, but I think that's got less real world application than most.
I mean, like, you can hold that opinion. That's fine. I think it's really important. Do you know an interesting one that links back to the Walt Disney one, cryogenically frozen, is people were finding if you typed in, Disney Frozen, the first thing that came up was not the film, it was this conspiracy theory. So people were making the links that like, oh, then it must be true, like, because that's what actually Google's spitting up.
Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
Hey, shout out Christine Moulton from the last podcast. She plugged Ancient Aliens, the show, right?
Yeah.
I still haven't seen it, but like, I think like, I don't know if this has been an episode of Ancient Aliens. I think that this would actually, surely would be a featured episode. I need to go and watch this show for this reason. What do you think of the idea that Atlantis, as an ancient civilization, had space age technology?
Honestly, there are a lot of different Atlantis-related conspiracy theories. Interestingly enough, especially within the circles of Freemasonry, not in terms of conspiracy theories about Freemasons, which there are plenty of, but Freemasons have this, about like half of them believe that and that this is an old study, but like believe that there's an Atlantis that existed and was full of elevated kind of people who had discovered a certain truth to the universe. But they can't be that enlightened because, the wise man built his house upon the rock.
Well, we could go down
there are some interesting theories about Atlantis here and there.
I mean, we could shout out our homeboy Michael Heiser, and go down a rabbit hole and be like, there's Nephilim afoot here. there's something of consequence here.
Except Michael Heiser would not like any of his ideas being used to prove the ancient aliens theories.
No,
because he has an entire website dedicated to it. As I can't remember if I mentioned in our podcast with Christine Welton, or if it was off air, that there is one major idea behind most ancient alien theories, and that is some supposed cuneiform tablets that were translated by a man named Zecharia Sitchin, who it turns out is not qualified to do such translation. Also turns out the tablets were not verified to be genuine historic artifacts, nor did the tablets say anything close to what he claimed it did. And he claimed that there were these people called the Anunnaki who resembled lizards that came down from the sky, and then there are different accounts that they came up from under the earth as well, and they were ancient. They were an ancient civilization. Some theories are that they came from outer space, some that they came from Earth and then went underground and came out later. Either way, they supposedly held wisdom and passed this wisdom down to the ancient Near Eastern people. But yeah, I'll put this in the description. There's a website called sitchiniswrong.com. I love the name of the website, and it implies and details every reason why you just can't follow these ideas of ancient aliens.
Well, I remember watching sort of a doco on the subject, and they talked about how the theory that they were inclined to embracing was that this particular people, let's call them Atlanteans for the sake of argument, were an advanced people group, but they weren't necessarily like, space age advanced, right? Like the likes of hieroglyphics, citing them, showed them with some kind of like hovercrafting technology, right? Or the fact that actually there was an argument that actually in the Stocko that the actual island of Atlantis was not in the Atlantean Ocean, but was probably more an island in the Mediterranean, and would have been like an island civilization that was perhaps buried either by an ancient flood event or like say some kind of massive volcanic event that actually could have actually submerged the city under the sea. That was one. Is it linked to kind of the sources you were mentioning, or?
I think so. Most ancient alien ideas have their roots in Zecharia Sitchin's writings. Without those, there seems to be no archaeological claim. They tend to say, well, you might say there's no proof for this, but there's definitely proof that shows that ancient civilizations believed something of the sort, and then without Sitchin's ideas, those ideas go out the window. And also one of the things that is also linked to Zecharia Sitchin's ideas is planet Nibiru, or planet X, which is a planet that is on constant trajectory around our solar system, and every so often, depending on who you talk to, some people say every few thousand years, some people say every few dozen, it comes into our solar system and then leaves. Some people have further ideas about Planet X, about how, or Nibiru, that that's where the Anunnaki came from.
I mean, that's a good segue to, Mark Zuckerberg is a lizard person, and so are the famous rich people.
Lizard people are one of the great conspiracy theories out there.
Can I just say, like, that theory seems on the surface completely outlandish and ridiculous to me. Like, there are some on this list that I'm thinking, okay, maybe, like, I really want to know, like, what is, maybe you don't know this, like, but, like, I want to know what is the basis that people have for thinking some of this.
Yeah.
And don't tell me it's Mark Zuckerberg, like, sticking his tongue out and, like, doing the eye thing when he's speaking to the Senate.
Yeah.
Is that the proof you're going to cite?
No. It's actually a picture where he has about 7 fingers on one hand. Same setting.
Yeah.
So the reptilian ideas tend to be from people who have started off smaller with their conspiracy theories, and then they get into more and more. And I think some Christians have a little bit of some Christian conspiracy theorists have a bit of an introduction to it through the likes of Bill Schneblin, who I mentioned in our first podcast.
Yes.
Who believed that he at times has put forward ideas that you can find reptilian shapeshifters in Mormon temples.
Okay.
And that you can also find them on secret military bases, and which is a little less far-fetched, but still far-fetched, but less so than the Mormon idea.
Okay.
And yeah, that's a whole nother thing. I'll maybe link a video to Bill Schneblin talking about that.
That was fun.
Yeah, and yeah, I think one of the biggest just mainstream pushes of the idea of the reptilian shapeshifters is David Icke, who's an Englishman. He pretty much anyone in power is a reptilian if you use his mode of rationale, I guess. The Queen is. They built the moon thousands of years ago as a mind control device. And those of you who are thinking that is preposterous, that is proof that the mind control device is working, because they don't want you to wake up.
And if I'm laughing, I'm just another non-believer.
Another sheeple, yeah.
Because I'm skeptical. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah. So it's kind of that circular. Well, I don't know if circular reasoning is the idea, but it's similar to the whole brain in a jar concept.
Yes.
There's no way to actually prove it, so it's a silly argument in and of itself. But it's interesting either way. Yeah.
No, I heard the idea that, so when Joe Rogan had Alex Jones on the podcast, and I like how he actually engages with Alex Jones, right? Because Joe and Alex are mates. So even though Joe's Joe will just have on people he wildly disagrees with just to actually have a conversation and see where the conversation goes, right? And he's actually said having Alex Jones on multiple times, hey, there are some things that you actually turned out true, and I actually agree with some of the things you've said, and there are some things that I, disagree with you. But he gives them a platform because he's a respecter of persons, not necessarily of just ideals, which I kind of admire.
Plus, also it gets him lots of views.
Yeah, true that. Well, I mean, I remember with one of the casts, he talked about Alex Jones talked about what the Chinese were doing with these chimeras, and it made me wonder if there's any link of with the reptilian thinking, or are they, as you understand, are they entirely different, or have you not heard about the Chinese chimera?
I've heard a little bit about it, but I've never looked into it, nor to see whether there's any connection to the reptilian ideas.
So, basically, I should probably footnote this as well. We're not professing to be any experts in any of this, dear audience.
No.
If anything,
to be believers.
No, yeah, well, good disclaimer. We're lovers of learning. We love actually. I was watching this Odd Ones Out video on conspiracy theories recently, and I loved how he kind of actually put it. I just want to know why people believe that. That just seems so fascinating, why people would hold different opinions. But I thought the Chimera one was interesting because it's basically this idea, and I invite you to look up any of these topics, look up this topic for yourself. The Chimera Theory is basically Chinese scientists are doing experimentation on human-animal hybrids to actually make, super soldiers, the ideal person. It's around a similar idea of like, is cloning happening in the world in different nations? Is it not? Has it been done successfully? Embryonic stem cell research, like similar kind of thinking.
Yeah.
Which
is
I guess
a great idea, I guess, for Alex Jones to espouse, because he being very pro-life that's a great way to put down any pro-choice arguments by saying, well, those aborted fetuses are not only children that have no chance to live, but not only that, but they're also going towards building human-animal hybrids that will take over the world. And
if I recall, that's the context it was being talked about in. Like, he was actually saying, there are politicians in the US who are signing off on just like, parts of babies and babies' bodies, right after birth, like and they're getting these bodies, can't confirm, can't pass an opinion and say yes, this is definitely true, or neither can I say I definitely don't believe that. We're humbly professing to say we want to open some conversation, we're learning as well, just acknowledging that this is something that some people believe. On the idea of actually brain in the jar, what do you take of the whole reality as a simulation? Like, Neil deGrasse Tyson and Elon Musk have kind of popularized this idea and kind of being, sound-bited and as talking about it. Do you subscribe to much of that idea, or
no? I'll refer to my previous statement, I guess, about how it is just an illogical idea to, well, not I don't know if illogical is the word, but you just can't make an argument for it, nor can you make an argument against it.
Yes.
If it was something more of like a Matrix type situation where people can be freed from the simulation, and then we had instances of supposed proofs from that, then maybe that could be proven. But I think most of the simulation theories are kind of along the lines of, you can only break free from this when you take DMT, which is just kind of like, if you want to examine something rationally, destroy your brain, your cognitive capacities, and now a lot of DMT people pro DMT will be hating me for saying that. And it makes us not see things that you don't see regularly. And
that's just how it's popularized. Like, everyone's like, saying that it will destroy your brain. But that's just, that's what they want you to believe.
And I probably am, for our 3 viewers, one of which is a hard conspiracy theorist, I could, that I'm now actually, I'm part of the conspiracy.
Yes, you are.
According to those conspiracy theories, if I'm starting to go against DMT, then I clearly cannot be. I must be getting paid by Big Pharma.
The person who's come closest to convincing me of this particular conspiracy theory, so this is one that I'm inclined towards, believe it or not, is Chuck Missler. Are you familiar with any of Chuck Missler's stuff?
I love Chuck Missler. I'm not familiar with a huge amount of his stuff, but what I have seen, he's a onto it guy.
So Chuck Missler, now deceased, bless him. He was a former scientist, like very high up. I think he worked for General Motors at one point. He worked for NASA at one point. Like, he's quite a brain, like rocket scientist, not an exaggeration, like an actual description of the positions that he held. He was entrepreneurial at one point. He went on to become a Bible teacher and kind of brought some of his understanding of like high level science and just general world knowledge to bear on his actually exegetical studies of the Bible. I remember hearing in one of his, he had a popular radio show called 6640, which was like how basically talking about how the Bible is an integrated message system, you know, that actually beautifully shows us like actually how it can be proven, you know, pretty much beyond a shadow of a doubt that actually the biblical worldview is the best way to view the world. And one such point he talked about on reality as a simulation, I remember hearing once upon a time, is this idea that actually if you look at the universe at an atomic level, the tiniest we can go, you're actually talking about things that are actually essentially digital, you know, even measurements and actually to the, you know, 10th exponent on a micro scale, you're actually talking about, you know, or negative exponent, I should say. You're talking about things that are actually divided by twos, binary, essentially, right? And so this idea of things being divisible by this and that, and thinking of actually the universe operating on this scale, on this very micro scale, and on the macro scale, on a binary understanding of things. This might lend itself to understand reality as being digital, but actually perhaps heaven beyond is a more unified reality where actually things all kind of a shared fabric of reality. And it kind of lends us to this eschatological vision that actually heaven is the grander reality. Heaven and earth actually combined is actually the reality we're all waiting for. That this idea that actually reality is a simulation kind of fits in quite nicely with a theistic worldview, because you could actually say like God has created this reality to be kind of a leaning towards a preparation for the reality that is to come, which is heaven and earth actually coinciding, Venn diagramming, converging on the same space terrestrially and spiritually.
Well, because I've heard of the simulation theories, but I've not heard too much of Neil deGrasse Tyson or Elon Musk, like you say, talking about it. I know that they do talk about it, but I haven't paid much attention. As very scientifically minded men, the men that they are, do they have similar arguments to, or similar theories to that idea that Chuck Missler has put forth?
Well, I mean, they actually reason it that, like, you know, perhaps super intelligent minds actually set this thing into motion, but it's like, it's a curious perspective, right? Because they both present as atheists, Neil deGrasse Tyson vocally. Not disrespectfully, but just vocally, I am an atheist. And it's like, it's funny when you start presenting like super intelligent minds, because it's not a far jump to start considering like, well, that sounds like a creator to me. And like, if you're talking about a creator, like that doesn't sound far a jump from theism. I don't know. Sounds like a kind of masquerading as theism. If by my examination. So Bermuda Triangle is a portal to another dimension. Basically, you know, the Bermuda Triangle is a space in the Atlantic Ocean, I believe, and off the coast of the United States, and it is a well-known, documented area for weird electromagnetic activity. Thousands of ships and planes and people have disappeared over decades of oceanic travel and air travel in this, you know, space, quite large area, this large triangulated area of airspace and ocean space. But some people actually are of the mind it could be actually a portal to another dimension. I think a more reasonable, rational mind is actually, because it's a space for weird electromagnetic space, things just actually go eerie and squarey and like actually just get lost and crash and never discoverable again. You can imagine even like a very technical, you know, plane of this day and age using GPS technology. If suddenly it lost its coordinates and lost its bearings, it could very easily get lost and very easily crash and very easily not find it's home, because we're talking about thousands of miles of ocean. Easy, right?
Yeah. No, that's too simple. No. Yeah. I mean, the Bermuda Triangle is, a lot of people think that since it's a triangulated position within the Atlantic Ocean, that may be where Atlantis is or was.
Yes.
A few different theories about that. I remember back in my conspiracy theory days, I don't know if I thought of this myself or if it was something that I had borrowed from someone else, but I don't remember anyone else speaking about it. But when I was speaking to a friend who was into some conspiracy theories, I said, like, what if that's, and this doesn't line up geographically with biblical description, but I said, what if that is where the Garden of Eden is? Especially because it's most likely on a mountaintop. But I said, what if that's where the Garden of Eden is? And that's where, the guardian outside of the garden is stopping people from getting in. Any ships that get near, they've seen it and they've been killed by this angel. It was a silly idea.
Did you get that idea watching the Disney film Atlantis? Because if you say yes, then you've convinced me. Solved.
Sadly not. Again, I don't know if it was my idea or if I borrowed it from someone else or
genius.
But I never believed it. That was one of my what if theories.
Did your friends start believing it? Be like, yeah, and run with it?
Well, I don't know if they believed it, but they were like, that's a good question, because that person wasn't the brightest either.
Bro, you're a wolf in sheep's clothing, honestly.
Yeah.
False teacher alert.
I was spreading conspiracy theories deliberately that I didn't even believe. Sophistry at its best.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Hey everyone, we went a bit over time in this episode, so we're splitting it off into two parts. Part 2 is already uploaded and the link should be in the description on YouTube. Thanks for listening to 2 or 3 Gathered.